There are some deer that defy the odds. The Browtine buck is definitely one of those deer. I hunted this buck for 7 years deep in a national forest in the North Georgia mountains, and he lived to be 9.5 years old. Here's the story of a big woods mountain buck that I will never forget. On a cold December day in 2015, I finally got a glimpse of a buck that I wanted dearly. He came to be known as the Browtine buck by my father and I. There was some great signing there that year, and it was him that made a lot of it. I was so excited to get these videos of him, but I wasn't able to seal the deal that year, and I'm so glad that I didn't. The Browtine buck was about 2.5 years old when this trail camera video was taken. The way I can tell that is because his hindquarters are bigger than his front shoulders and his chest. Sometimes 2.5-year-old bucks have pretty good racks, so you have to ignore that and just focus on their body. I'm sure this buck evaded my dad and I on many different occasions. We would always split up and hunt in different areas where this buck lived. There were many times we hunted back there, and we would both go for weeks without seeing any deer, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, a buck would pop out on one of us after several weeks of just seeing nothing. But I always try to remind myself there are thousands of acres of woods there where I hunt in the mountains, so the deer could be anywhere, and I just have to be patient. In 2015, the Browtine buck showed up twice to this mock scrape. There was big buck sign in that area every year after that, but I never could see the buck and never got him on camera. It was frustrating because we got this buck on camera several times during daylight hours, and we never could see it in this spot during the daylight. We didn't see anything in this spot at daylight. I believe what was happening is this buck would come close to me or my dad, and I think he was smelling us before he even got to us, and he would just go the other way. 4 years later, this buck shows back up in the same area at a mock scrape. I couldn't believe what I was seeing, and I wanted this buck so bad, I can't even put it into words how bad I wanted him. I don't believe I ever even thought about the trail camera videos from 2015 when I got these videos in 2019. All I knew was that I wanted this buck. I was absolutely determined to do whatever it took to take this deer. I'll never forget seeing these videos for the first time. I was almost shaking with excitement when I was watching them. I wanted to hunt that buck every day possible, but I knew better than to do that. I know how mountain bucks will pattern you if you hunt them too hard, and they'll just start moving at night. On Christmas Eve in 2019, I found myself within 70 yards of the Browtine buck. My dad and I got in late that morning, and we was about to split up and go our separate ways. We jumped him up in a funnel, and he took off and stood just for a few moments, and I couldn't get a shot at him. I had trees between him and I. My dad did have a shot, however, and I waited for him to take it, and he did. And we both thought he'd got the buck. Me and my dad got up there, and there was no blood. The only thing we found was hair, and what had happened, he had just barely clipped the top part of his back. And I'll never forget walking up there and through that funnel, and all I could smell was where that buck was just so rutted up. He stunk, and that's all we could smell was him in there. But I was so disappointed and upset that my dad didn't get him. I remember saying that we'll never see that deer again, because my dad always told me when I was a kid, you mess up on a big mature mountain buck and you shoot and miss it, you usually won't see it again. But I'm so glad both of us were wrong on this deer. On December the 4th, 2022, I had no idea what was coming around the corner. The Browtine buck had showed up to the mock scrape 20 minutes before I shot him. We had some Evercalm that we put out in the scrape, and he seemed to be pretty interested in it. There wasn't many acorns that fall, so deer movement was slow. I hadn't been seeing any deer in some of my best spots, and there wasn't a whole lot of buck sign either. The biggest sign I had found was from the brow tine buck, so I decided to focus hunting in that area. This buck lived in a pretty remote area, so I always keep in mind that these deer that live in those places are really sensitive to hunting pressure. I had to pick and choose the best times to hunt in there. I mainly hunt from the ground in the mountains, so the wind and the weather needs to be right. I had been waiting for the right conditions to hunt this spot, and I had already sat there 2 different times, and usually after the 3rd or 4th sit in this area that I was hunting the brow tine buck in, usually it's just not very good after 3 or 4 sits. So I knew I needed to make it count, and on the 3rd sit it all came together. At about 10:15 that morning, I decided to do a couple of short grunts with my mouth just like this. The brow tine buck heard me and came looking for me, and as soon as the buck turned his head, I flipped my Tacticam on and took the best shot that I could. God has been so good to me this year. Get this beautiful northeast Georgia mountain monster. I can't believe how big this deer is. I have hunted so hard and I obsess over these animals, and there's just nothing like it to get this deer. I believe this is the same buck I had on camera but 2 or 3 years ago in here, in the same genetics. It may not be the same deer, but it looks a lot like him. I am just so blessed. They got this deer. He's got this like a split brow tine. He's got that one coming off. I mean, just what a buck. I just cannot believe it. Just a beautiful deer. It felt so good to have finally gotten this buck. All the year-round scouting and dedication and hard work paid off. Afterward, my dad and I sent the jawbone off to a lab to see how old it was. We knew it was old, but we weren't 100% sure how old, and it came back 9.5 years old. One of the ways I was able to figure out that this was the same buck throughout all the years was not just rack features, but his facial features also. All deer have different unique facial features, and this buck had a white spot close to his nose that helped me identify him. I'm so blessed that God let me take this incredible animal, and I'll never forget all the memories I made chasing this buck.